The Washington Times. Now, this is obvious. It's one of the most conservative newspapers in the entire country. I mean, it's uh, just a blatant semi-fascist propaganda paper. I hope I'm not slandering the Washington Times. But I tell you, it's not something you would expect to see Lon and Constance and a story told by Jesus' uncle reviewed him. But allow me to explain. Well, I can't explain too much except to say back in 2007, my earliest version, earliest edition, partial edition, I guess you'd say, of what has just recently been re-released as An Accidental Christ was published by just a good friend of mine at Telesis Aura, just in a very limited edition, just called Accidental Christ. Okay, now you can still find this on the internet for hundreds of dollars. I mean, $700-800. Okay, just because it's a rare collectible kind of thing. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And it got the attention. It got the attention of the reviewer at the Washington Times, a very kind of famous author in his own right. Wrote a best-selling book on Ronald Reagan, and so he was a columnist for the Washington Times, and he got a hold of this and wanted to review it. Now, I'm going to read the review, because usually authors like to read very complimentary reviews. Makes us feel good and worth living. And I very much expected, how blasphemous and things. But the guy wrote a pretty good review. I'm going to share it with you, and of course it was a review of this is a partial version of this, and I had this out the other day, and sharing information in a desperate attempt to get you to buy it and spread the good word, spread the gospel of An Accidental Christ. But the review itself tells like a synopsis of the story, and without giving too much away, I thought I'd share his review with you, if that sounds like fun. Even has our picture. Let's see, what does it say there? I guess it doesn't say anything. Okay, here's what it says. A story told by Jesus' uncle. And this was May 13th, back in 2007. Just when we thought Anna Nicole Smith would dominate the news, she and her baby and her boyfriends began to fade from view. I forget what that story was about, okay? Jesus, who has more staying power, was waiting in the wings, so to speak, the subject of yet another discovery. A cluster of ossuaries, bone repositories in Jerusalem. And this is what I talked about yesterday, the Tomb of Jesus story. A cluster of ossuaries in Jerusalem that seemed to have his name or those of his wife and son. The media made much of this, along with skepticism by several biblical archaeologists. And to his credit, he says biblical archaeologists. The Da Vinci Code of 2003 began this process of questioning New Testament doctrine by means of a colorful narrative. It was followed by the discovery of the presumed ossuary of Jesus' half-brother James, and books variously asserting that Jesus married Mary Magdalene, sired a son, or asked Judas to betray him. Now comes Lon Milo DuQuette's An Accidental Christ, or in these years it was called Accidental Christ, a novel with yet another approach. The story is told by Jesus' elderly uncle Clopas, and a gripping tale it is. This thesis is that a group developed the plan to replace King Herod's heir, Antipas, with a descendant of the legendary King David. They had been looking for the perfect candidate. Because Jesus' father is a Davidian and his mother Mary from the house of Saul, he is that candidate. The plan's emissary, who calls on Jesus in Alexandria, says, "You, my young friend, are the David of your generation. Do you not see? For all intent and purposes, your blood makes you king of the Jews." Events described in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are explained through the prism of the plan. Jesus spends his otherwise unknown childhood in an exclusive prep school in Alexandria. He then enters an Essene monastery at Mount Carmel, the focus of which is medicine. It is at odds with the ascetic Essenes of Qumran by the Dead Sea. There he learns to distinguish real ailments from hypochondria, a skill that will prove useful in his days ahead as a worker of seeming miracles. He learns another important thing at Mount Carmel about life and death, but you'll have to read the book lest I give away the whole story. The plan's leaders under Joseph of Ramtha, or Joseph of Arimathea, tells him it's time to activate his, quote, ministry. First, he has himself baptized by his mad cousin John, then supplants John as the leader of a flock of the baptized. 12 Carmelites are sent to serve as a combined advance and security team for Jesus. They become disciples. They stay at Mary's estate in Cana. Joseph, now deceased, dubbed the great carpenter, was actually a wealthy lumberman. More like a developer, okay. Attending the famous wedding at Cana, Jesus used some canny ledger men to appear to turn water into wine. Other miracles, such as walking on water and the fishes and loaves, are given plausible explanations. Because the Herodians do not tolerate political dissent, Jesus speaks in code. When in his speeches he mentions the Father, he means not God, but King David. Prince is the code for his own candidacy. After John the Baptist's cult-like followers attach themselves to Jesus and their number grows, the Pharisee who preside over the temple in Jerusalem, along with the political operatives of King Antipas, are after him. The plan goes awry, but how and with what consequence, you'll have to learn in the book. Before his death, Dr. Joseph Philbrick, an American biblical scholar, completed a book, The Gospels, Consolidated and Integrated in the Original Translation, intended to harmonize side by side the key elements of the four Gospels. This clarifies some seemingly contradictions within the context of the Christian faith. Mr. DuQuette, on the other hand, gives us an entirely different view of the basis of the belief system that has been predominant for 2 millennia. The reader will have to be the judge. And that was Peter D. Hannaford. He was a co-author of Remembering Reagan. Okay. And here's that story in the most unlikely of newspapers of the day. But they did manage to capture a pretty good picture of Constance and me. And I think they took it off the dust jacket of this book. Like I say, if you buy this book on the internet for hundreds and hundreds of dollars, I don't get a nickel of that, okay? Not a penny. So don't think you're doing me a favor by buying this. But if you're a collector of interesting things like that, of course, invest in what you want. What I would like you to buy, what I would like you to read, what I hopefully hope, well, I hope you will hopefully enjoy An Accidental Christ, the story of Jesus as told by his uncle. So I guess that's part 2 of my plug for this book. And it was just by accident, in my attempt to straighten up at least part of my office, that I even ran across this. So that's it for today. Continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.